Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, "A Ticket Taker Didn't Believe I Was Under 13, so we got free tickets for a year." Alright, I don't know if this counts as petty revenge, but it was a pretty nice payout for me and my family. Two things you should know before I start is that 1, I am very tall for my age, and could easily look 3 to 6 older than I actually am at any point. 2, I get really bad anxiety, and back when this story happened, I was not a confrontational person. So my town had a botanical garden that hosts a Christmas celebration every year, where you can go through their property that is absolutely covered from head to toe and back again with Christmas lights. Now, I live in the Midwest, so during the winter months, it can get extremely cold, especially at night, which is when the event took place. So, by this fact, most of my family decided to stay at home that day, and just myself, 11 female at the time, and my brother, 19 male at the time, were the only ones going. How this place works is you walk in and you go to one of 2 lines, if you paid for tickets online or if you were buying them right then. My brother and I went to the right then ticket line and quickly made it to the front. At this garden, there were 2 options, 13 and above, which I believe was $15 tickets, but don't quote me on that, and 12 and below, which was only $6 if I remember correctly. My brother went up to the guy and the following conversation happened. Brother will be B, the guy will be G, and I'll be me. B, hi, could we have 113 and above and 112 and below ticket please? G, just staring at my brother, who's that 12 and below ticket for? B, getting really confused, pointed to me, who has been standing next to him the whole time. Her. G, smugly, oh really, who old is she? B, she's 11, what's the problem? G, there's no way she's 11. I will ring you up for 213 and up tickets. My brother got kinda upset, then I remembered I kept my student ID in the back of my phone case, as we needed it for lunch at school. Me, pulling my student ID out of the back of my phone. Here, I am 11. My student ID shows I'm in 6th grade. G, nope, that's old, you're not 11. Note, I don't know how this guy thought it was an old one, it has the school year in the bottom left corner. I started getting really anxious at this and my hands started shaking. My brother noticed this and basically said, "Duck it," and had the dude ring us up for the 2 older tickets. The rest of the night was better. We got hot chocolate and went through the attraction, still an awesome sight to see. My brother and I got home about an hour and a half to 2 hours later, and my brother told my mum the story of the jerk at the ticket thing. While my brother and I were just gonna forget about it, my mother was not. The next morning she called the garden, and once she was speaking to a real human, they have one of those impossibly long answering machines. She explained the situation and how it made me really upset. The person on the other end of the phone apologized profusely and offered her and her family, who was my mum, me, my older brother, and my older sister, free passes to the garden for a year. My mother happily said yes, as their gardens are beautiful. The person on the phone also said he would have a little talking to with the guy. We made use of the year pass, and I never did see that guy again. Anyway, like I said, don't know if this fits here, but I hope you enjoyed. I want to make a little edit here. The garden is only open some of the year, only a couple of months. While it was a year pass, it was the garden's year, not the actual calendar year. Next one is titled, "Cut Me Off? Get Soaked." Beautiful day for a bike ride here in Vancouver, so off I went down one of our many expensive but well-designed bike lines. Needless to say, bikes have the right of way on bike lanes, but it never stops careless pedestrians from stepping into it at a bad time. It's usually not a big deal, but it bothers me when I have to slam on the brakes and then I get to hear some Karen screaming at me about how I almost killed her. Which is what happened an hour ago. I had to slam on the brakes and skid to a stop to avoid hitting her, and she instantly starts screaming at me to watch where I'm going, etc. Hey lady, you walked into traffic, not me. She walked off down the pedestrian path and I resumed my ride a minute later, headed in the same direction. And just as I was coming up to her, the bike and pedestrian paths are parallel and run right next to each other. I noticed a nice big puddle, accumulation of rainwater from recent days in the area between the two paths. I timed it perfectly to fly through that puddle just as she was walking next to it. I didn't stop, just slowed down enough to witness the soaking behind me and hear some of the yelling. Next one is titled, Be a Jerk? No training then. I work in a head office of a family-run essential business that has 10 satellite locations. Most of the managers at those locations are fine. The fellow who runs the storefront attached to the office is a real peach though, so will be referred to as such. He comes into my office all the time to complain about every little thing from his staff not working to how we aren't processing his requests for inventory fast enough. Our DM hates his guts because his staff has to be rotated out on a weekly basis because they just don't want to work with him, as he constantly berates everyone and no mistake is ever his fault. It's gotten so bad that other staff refuse to be rotated to the head office storefront. Peach also loves to come into my office strutting about like he owns the place and stealing things off of our desks when we're not looking or away. Nothing major, just pens and supplies, but it's annoying as hell. I do suspect him of stealing lunches, but I can't really prove it. He's also disorganized as hell and makes our job harder. His invoices are a mess and he doesn't properly account for his inventory or expenses. And we have to put up with it because he turns up the charm with the owners, a really nice couple, and is the top sales guy in the company, hence his posting here. So now to my petty revenge. It is an ongoing situation. Our software provider is going to roll out a new version of our invoicing software. Functionally it is the same, but visually it's like night and day, and a lot of the old menus have been slimmed down or moved around. It's my responsibility to do teleconferences with the staff at our locations and illustrate to them the differences and conduct training as best as I am able given the circumstances. And we'll be rolling out the new version this coming Monday, as our provider will be ceasing support for all previous versions. I showed the cashier just fine. Peach refuses to learn. I told him that it would be to his benefit to learn now as support was ceasing. He didn't care. I told him that the new version would be rolling out very soon and the DM needed everyone to be on the same page and using the new software. Also didn't care. And then he told me he would continue using the old version. He's the type that just does what he wants. In my final Zoom meeting with the owners and the software people today, I reported that the new version is good and that most of the staff was taking to it well. But if our provider were ceasing support for the old version, there would be no need to keep it installed at the storefront, surely? Everyone agreed. So at week's end the plug is going to be pulled on it at the store level. The upper management and owners support this fully for the sake of efficiency, and the software company thinks it's great to pull the band-aid off quickly, so to speak, and I guess this saves them resources too. Peach's cashier is aware and she is eagerly awaiting the CRA fit on Monday. Next one is titled, Contract Ended with My Company. Boss wanted me to stay an extra week but I said no. So back in 2017 I used to be a receptionist, security guard, and worked at a customer site. I had been working for this company for about a year and went through 3 different supervisors. My last supervisor was notoriously known for not responding to emails, phone calls or texts. It got so bad I had the regional director involved in this issue. Couple months go by and I was able to get my bachelor's and a better job. As is custom, I sent my 2 weeks notice in an email CCing all my leadership so they are aware of it. As usual, there is no response from my supervisor. A week goes by and I haven't heard if they're going to be sending a replacement because I need to start training them. I even text him asking him if he wants me to stay an extra week, but hear nothing back. So my last week comes and on Monday my boss texts me to ask me if I can stay the extra week because they still haven't found a replacement. I text him back that I'll do it, but he'll have to pay me $5 above my hourly wage. He texts back saying that it couldn't be done, so I text back that now it'll be $10 above my normal wage, and I tell him that if he doesn't respond the rate goes up another $10. He calls me on a conference with another supervisor and tells me that I can't do that, and I respond with a, yes I can. As you can imagine, he didn't take me on my offer and I had 1 week where I could just slack off before I started my new job. Next one is titled, Post-Breakup Stealing Back My Stuff. I just saw a post about stealing back property and it reminded me of a time I did the same. I was engaged to my ex and we were waiting for me to finish college before we got married. However, he ended up changing his mind and telling me God was calling him to be a priest. It was a horrific time for me. I still had a key to his house. He'd taken the one I had back, but my aunt and uncle had a spare as well that I needed to drop off. He knew this. They were out of town when this went down, so I couldn't get it back immediately. Anyway, they finally came home and I got the key. That's when I heard from one of his sisters who told me everything, that the God thing was a pathetic lie, that he was cheating on me and that he used my ring to propose to her just the other day, not even 2 weeks later. She told me he'd been shunned by the family for this. They all loved me and asked to stay a part of my life. The petty revenge? His sister told me he'd be out of town. He'd bought a house for us but didn't have much stuff to go in it. Naturally, since I'd be living there too, I provided a couch, a bed, all the kitchen utensils, pots, pans, plates, basically most of the furniture. I got all my brothers, dad, cousins and uncles involved and we went over and proceeded to take everything I still had the receipt for, which ended up being everything but the food. I even took out my dog, who I found out he was planning on selling. I left a little note to let him know he could buy all his own crap and I was simply taking back my stuff. So him and his new girl came home to an empty house. I did receive one message about it and him going to the police. I simply asked if he could provide the receipts for it all, as I could. He never responded. To this day it makes me giggle. I ended up giving everything away and my mum took my dog. She was going to wait until I finished college to give him back since my apartment didn't allow dogs. She decided to keep him instead. Now the dog is spoiled, happy, and obsessed with my mum, and I am married with 2 kids while my ex's relationship is apparently rocky and filled with fights, according to his sister, who still hasn't forgiven him. Next one is titled, "She Took Credit for My Work. I Got Her Fired." This is the story of Annoying Witch, a girl who, like the title says, took credit for my work. A little background: she wanted to go into tech management, but somehow got hired as a coder at my company. Because she only minored in CS at undergrad, I had to help her learn the basics of the job. This led to my productivity going down, and my manager started to knock me for it. I don't mind helping people at work, but if you come to me several times a day asking for the basics, well, that's gonna get on my nerves. So I started to keep a record of all the times she asked me for help so I could bring it up during the review cycle. If you know Git, skip this paragraph. Now, when you're working on a coding project, you use a software called Git to help coordinate changes that you make to the code base. Git handles things like multiple people working on the same file, and it's mostly automatic. There are other tools that do the same thing, but Git is the most popular one and almost everyone knows at least the basics of it. An important part of Git is branching. This is relevant, I promise. You're supposed to do all the work in independent branches, and when you've confirmed it works, you push them to the master branch. At any time, the master branch is supposed to have a version of the code that has been tested and actually, works. Obviously, since it's a vital tool that can be used in a variety of coding jobs, Annoying Witch would know at least the basic commands, right? Nope, she knew nothing about it and I had to teach her everything. To make things worse, she refused to learn anything, even going so far as to say, "How about I just do my part, and you do the Git stuff for me," in all earnestness. Even worse, when she did start using Git, she used it completely incorrectly, working on master and directly pushing changes to master without testing. Bugs from her code seeped into my section of the project we were working on. I begged the project lead, her manager, and my manager to let us use additional tools to ensure broken code would not be accepted, but to no avail. One day, my manager asked her to demo the project. She started immediately, full steam ahead, without switching to a working version of the code. I was getting a cup of coffee, and when I got back the screen was showing several different error warnings and horribly mangled output. As I stepped up to show them the correct version, she said, "Oh, you, _Dickrider must have pushed a broken version. Let me show you mine," and switched to my version. I don't know how she got away with it, but she did. From that moment on, the project was cursed. I never got any credit for the progress made, or even the additional features I implemented. My manager never listened to me and the project lead blamed me for all the delays on it. I submitted a complaint to HR but nothing happened. I dusted off my resume and fired up LinkedIn. Ideally, I would have said nothing, found a new job and left, but a golden opportunity presented itself to me. The company we worked for was pretty lax about drinking. We usually had company parties every quarter, and while some people would really let loose, the general idea was that as long as you weren't getting blackout drunk in front of management, you could get away with whatever. The company had an annual party where all people, from the CEO to the interns, were invited. Annoying which had given me a fake apology when that project ended, and thought we were on decent terms. So when she suggested we go together, an idea came to my mind. So I suggested we pre-game and take an Uber there. What could go wrong? I'd been working there 2 years, while it was her first year. The general etiquette was that we would pay attention to a few presentations, clap, mingle and socialize for an hour, then have dinner. Drinking was supposed to be during and after dinner only. This being her first time, she didn't know that. I think you can see where I'm going with this. I mixed some extra strong drinks, and swapped mine with the soda I used as the mixer. She even joked about smuggling a shot to take before going in. Why not? I grabbed a couple mini bottles and filled mine with water. So we got to the venue, I excused myself, and when I got back she had already been swept into the presentation. I went in and sat at my assigned seat. The presentation was half an hour of her sitting awkwardly and hiccuping while getting dirty looks from basically everyone at her table. During the socializing hour she managed to compose herself a little, but it was clear anyone who talked to her only did so for a few minutes before ignoring her for the rest of the night. I was concerned that when dinner came around the alcohol would have worn off, but the first thing she did upon sitting down for dinner was topping herself off with wine. She's normally loud, and I guess the alcohol made her speak louder. By the end of the night not a single person hadn't heard her. I went home as soon as I could and went to bed. The next week was hell for her. The managers work Saturdays to keep up with an offshore team, and I'm pretty sure her behavior was discussed because Monday as soon as she came in she was called into her manager's office. I don't know how she kept her job, but she wasn't gonna enjoy it. No one spoke to her, and she was too sullen to ask me for help, so her work faltered. The review cycle came and went. I got a slight raise, she got the minimum 2% that everyone was guaranteed. Now a couple months later I got an offer at another company. I wish I could say it was my dream job and it paid me $1 billion a year to push a button while I lived in Hawaii, but it was honestly just another job. I turned in my 2 weeks notice and started to prepare documentation for whatever poor soul replaced me when my manager called me in. I guess they realized they needed me, because they offered to pay me my maximum bonus for the last year. I countered with a ridiculously high demand, a lot more than what I was offered, backdated to start at the previous review. 3 days later, they came back and offered a less ridiculous increase, still backdated. I knew that this company only made such offers after actually allocating the money, and that could only happen if my managers made some insane promises to finance and payroll. I asked for a couple days, shuffled my feet, rejected the counteroffer, and left. I never heard from that company or Annoying Witch again. Next one is titled, That's Mr. Smitba to You. This happened many years ago, but it still makes me smile. I worked in a tavern and lived in a big old barn of a house on a private college campus. I was a mid-20s party girl and my roommates were my co-workers, also hearty partiers. We closed the bar at 2 a.m. and then came home to drink our beers. I decided to rent out the basement to a law student, 3rd year, the most obnoxious know-it-all in captivity. He introduced himself as Mr. Smitba, I'm rhyming here, to which I just softly cackled. He turned out to be a nightmare. There is a baby grand piano involved in this story, but we'll let that be. I gave him notice of eviction, he wouldn't go. Said we made too much noise coming at 3 a.m. and having fun in the kitchen right above his bedroom. He knew our schedule when he moved in. One night a group of bikers we knew and girlfriend, co-worker had tamed, no fighting, etc. They were actually pussycats that really liked us, good guys actually, came in and I had a light bulb moment. I asked them if they would do me a favor for a keg of beer, well, hell yeah. I explained the situation and we all headed home. I have a ton of hob-nailed manly men laughing and stomping around my kitchen, but wait. What's that? Complaining from the basement? The men just looked at each other and headed for the stairs. They entered his bedroom, saying, "Hey, buddy," while flipping on the light. Before he saw them, he starts to say, "That's Mr. Smitba to you, gulp." Spokes biker says he heard that he, Mr. S, had been giving us a hard time and wouldn't leave, which lawyer denied. Dude says, "Still cracks me up, me said we can't hurt you, but we can always come back." All of us are quietly listening at the top of the stairs, and with that the laughter exploded. We resumed our merrymaking for the night. Mr. Smitba was out of there in a day and a half. I saw him around campus a few times after that, and he would run before I could even say, "Hello, Mr. Smitba." Funny, too, I married a law school student about 10 years later and we lived pretty happily ever after. It's not what you know, it's who you know. Last one is titled, "Block My Car in a Handicapped Spot. Now You Can't Leave." I was reading through the comments of another post I made in another sub, and it reminded me of this story that happens to my mum. Several years ago my mum had to have knee surgery, leading her to be in crutches with limited mobility for several months. She was granted an accessible parking permit. My mum went to the market to do her shopping and used the spot. She wouldn't normally even use it, but it was the dead of winter and super icy out. When she was coming out, there's a car with no sticker on it and this young kid getting out of his car parked right close to her car, making it impossible to get into unless she climbed over the passenger side. She was polite to the kid who had just left his car. She said it was an older Toyota. She said, "Can you move your car so I can get in?" The kid flat out said, "No, I am just going in shopping, I don't have the time," and started to go in. And she said, "I can't get in my car," and the sucker took off. I didn't mention, but it was like -40 out at the time. Well, this really upset my mum. She grabbed the bottle of water in her basket and took her key to push open the lock hatch on each door and poured a healthy amount of water in each lock and forced her way into her passenger's side door to her driver's seat and left parked on a different spot and waited. The guy tried from open his car, but you guessed it, each lock was frozen. She watched him struggle for 10 minutes and left with a smile on her face. My mum is kinda evil. Thanks for listening.